Training arc, 3rd POV, the sun shone brilliantly in the sky, casting a green glow on the vegetation. On this day, the Demon Slayer headquarters was bustling with activities as servants moved around from one place to another. All of the Hashiras, except Shinobu Kocho and Seiji Shirgan, were gathered in a meeting. They all stood in front of the main building, their presence worthy of the finest warriors humanity could offer. They had just received rather shocking news, so there was silence. Until a voice exploded and broke the serenity. Upper Moon 6. What the hell? Sanemi screamed with veins popping all over his face. He just got out from the hospital. How did he manage to slay another Upper Moon? Every Hashira present looked at Sanemi with varying degrees of amusement. In truth, they also had a reaction to the news, and Sanemi freaking out was a good distraction. Apparently, Seiji encountered them while he was on a date with his fiancée Mitsuri. We knew there was a strong demon lurking in that area but didn't know it was an Upper Moon, Lady Amain, who had come to deliver the news in place of Ubuyashiki said with a measured tone. Did he come back to report? Ju asked, his face unreadable to everyone other than Seiji. No, his Kasugai crow came back in his stead and reported the news. He himself seemed to be preoccupied with other important things. I am finding the final puzzle, or so he describes what he is doing, although he said he was coming back in a few days, she added. If one looked closely, you could see that Ju was disappointed. He was someone who missed his friends, well, in his case a friend, as Seiji was really the only one he was close with. But the last part put a microscopic smile on his face. I see. That means he was not injured much during the fight like last time. I'm glad, Ju said with a satisfied nod. Even though he couldn't see him, the knowledge that Seiji was okay put him at ease. It was rarely mentioned, but for someone who was used to losing the people he cared for, the safety of a friend meant much. Well, that includes almost everyone in the Demon Slayer Corp really. They were just a bunch of broken people trying to fix the world because they didn't know how to fix themselves. Everyone had lost people they loved. Why is he the only one who gets lucky, damn it? I am the one with special blood, Upper Moons should flock around me instead. Sanemi said with gritted teeth. It might look like he was being petty and too competitive with Seiji. But deep down, he was frustrated that demons were targeting Seiji. Sanemi didn't want him to bear the burden alone. If there was anyone who deserved the burden, it should be him. The boy who killed his own mother. So why do you keep going after Seiji? Come to me. Sanemi thought to himself. Rengoku nodded once, twice, and acknowledged the fire burning in Sanemi's heart. Although Sanemi was bad at expressing himself, he understood Sanemi's feelings. I think it's better this way. It's much safer that the strongest among us was the one who encountered them, if not there may have been causality and we may even lose a Hashira, Ju said. The others also seemed to agree with that statement, but that was only the logical part of them. Another part of them was not satisfied either. Your words hold truth. But it is also frustrating for me, as someone who is the oldest amongst the Hashira. I'd rather risk my life fighting an Upper Moon too, instead of leaving everything to young Seiji, Jaomi said, his hands bulging as he prayed. Indeed, Seiji is the strongest of us, but first and foremost, he is our friend. We can't let him do everything on his own, we have to catch up. Rengoku declared with a raised fist. Everyone agreed with that statement. They shared the same title and duty, therefore they couldn't let Seiji do everything himself. Otherwise, how would they dare rub shoulders with him? Seiji had now set a standard that they had to meet. His mere existence in this world was causing changes. It was like being at the peak of a mountain. The Hashiras were at that peak, they didn't know how else to climb higher, so they stagnated. But then Seiji came in, climbing even higher and reaching higher peaks which they didn't know were possible. With that example, they now had a higher goal to strive for. Sometimes, it was not just a strong enemy that forced you to grow, but also a strong ally. My husband proposed a new arrangement, where everyone will have the chance to learn from each other. That way, you can help one another in growing stronger, Lady Amain said. You will all be partnered with another Hashira in your missions and your goal will be to push each other to new heights. I understand your competitive nature to grow stronger, but you also have a bigger reason to do so. Every gaze hardened at that and they knew what it was. Demons. Lady Amain said, they are getting more active and higher-ranked demons are also increasing in number. With the movement of the 12 Kazukis, humanity needs you all to be stronger than ever. This generation is now officially the most dangerous one, every heart burned with new intensity. In the canon timeline, it would have taken the attack on the Swordsmith village and the looming threat of the Demon King for the Hashriyas to start a new training. But this time, due to the influence of Seiji, it was already here. As demons sharpen their claws in the dead of the night, the demon slayers also sharpen their swords. The final battle was on the horizon. Third POV, training ground of the demon slayer headquarters, a flash of violent green, a rope of calm blue, and then a chain of bright yellow. These colors clashed amid the giant cloud of dust that came alive due to the ongoing battle. The incredible forces of nature battled for dominance. The winds were not winds, they were blades that sliced everything in the atmosphere. You could hear the bizarre sound of a river flowing and crashing on the battlefield. A constant shockwave spread through the surroundings. One would feel their skin burning with each wave of the air. There was an explosive roar at the center of chaos. Boom. Jewel was violently sent out from the smoke like a rag doll and a blur of green and yellow followed right after. Zhu planted his feet on the ground and used his momentum to slide across the ground as if it were liquid. He easily changes direction with incredible mobility. The green blur that was on his tail exploded in his previous location as Zhu dodged, 1 second late and it would have hit him. But Zhu had a serene expression on his face as if he was just hit by a gentle breeze. He adjusted the way he held his sword and clashed against the yellow blur that came instantly. Steel ground against steel and produced a bright spark. Zhu's hand shook as he barely stopped the intensity behind every swing of Rengoku's sword. Hey, do you think maybe we shouldn't use our real swords? Zhu asked. I don't know, either way, I won't hurt you. Rengoku beamed a smile and contrasting to his smile, he put more force behind his sword, causing Zhu's arm to shudder under the weight. Dumbass, if we used wooden swords we won't be able to go all out. The smoke cleared up and the green blur was revealed to be Sanemi. And how can we get stronger without even going all out? Sanemi finished with a broad smile on his face. Zhu pivoted on his heels and redirected the linear force pressing on him to the side. Rengoku fell forward due to momentum but with a quick spin of his sword which was blocked again by Zhu, he repositioned himself. Actually, we can practice our techniques instead of trying to kill each other, Zhu said. Oh, and how has that been going for you? Can you claim to be stronger than me? Sanemi asked with a growl to which Zhu could not answer. Because he was not stronger than Sanemi. And I am not trying to kill you, Sanemi added, or more like ordered him to acknowledge that fact. Zhu still remained silent. Because he was doubtful of that claim. Stop nerding over techniques, we need to sharpen our battle instincts. That's the only way we can grow stronger, Sanmei said. Amongst the Hashiras, Gyomei and Tengen had already teamed up and went out for missions. Shinobu was a medic so she was exempted from the training program. That left Sanemi, Zhu and Rengoku. It was an odd number so they couldn't pair up, they needed Seiji. And since Seiji was absent, the three decided to spend a day or two sparring against each other while they waited for his return. They even slept in the Demon Slayer headquarters last night. Enough chit-chat, why don't you two come together at me? Sanemi said while flashing a smile that should belong to a demon instead of a demon slayer. If that's what you want, comrade, Rengoku was the first one to respond and he matched Sanemi's smile with his own heroic grin. Although he did not say it, he was extremely fired up training with the two swordsmen whom he still looked upon as superior to him. He was going to take advantage of this sparring session to the fullest. With a blur of speed and scorching force, he exploded towards Sanemi. The Wind Hashira never dropped his smile and welcomed Rengoku with a hurricane made to dismember body parts. I still think we should use wooden swords. Zhu muttered to himself while looking at the ongoing battle. It looked dangerous. Boom * clash. Shing. Shing. Kriya. Why don't you try harder, newbie? Of course, my passionate comrade. Boom. You are pissing me off. I see, but it seems to be working. The flame in your heart is blazing brighter and brighter. Boom. I think that's just his anger. Sengoku. Zhu continued watching the battle with flat eyes. They are really going at it, he thought to himself. In the end, he decided to drop all guards and join in. They seemed to be having fun and for once, he wanted to join. Maybe this was what they called hanging out with friends. Water breathing, 11th form, Zhu muttered to himself, and as soon as those words fell, the world stilled. Rengoku and Sanemi immediately stopped their clash and turned towards Zhu, or at least to the place where they thought Zhu was. He was not there anymore. What abruptly shifted their attention to Zhu was not a sense of danger. The sudden explosion of someone's bloodlust and presence could be scary, like Seiji's. But what was even scarier was the complete erasure of it. Yes. Zhu had suddenly gone completely out of their sense, and that shook them completely. Dead calm, Zhu appeared in front of them. There he was, in front of them. But Sanemi and Rengoku could not move. Their mind and body refused to believe in the existence of Zhu at that moment. Even when they saw the danger, their body refused to acknowledge it. Zhu continued his attack, slow and steady. In the chaotic battle, there was calm, and that was the most dangerous thing. It seemed the fight was going to be over until Sanemi's body suddenly exploded into action. His arms whipped, faster than sound, and blocked Zhu's sword. He forced his body, which was trained only to react when necessary, to react to what his body deemed to be nothing. Boom. Finally decided to get serious, huh? You sure are dangerous, Sanemi said as they pushed against each other. Rengoku was blasted away by the shockwave a few meters away, and he watched everything with wide, focused eyes. He was learning, rapidly at that. You are the one who said to give you everything, Zhu said, so here you go. The water Hashria disappeared again, leaving Sanemi to react to nothing. This time, he reacted to the wrong nothing by slashing at his right side, but Zhu appeared on his left side. Right then, a blur of yellow crashed against Zhu and sent him flying away. It was Rengoku. His eyes were wide and shone bright, there was also a wide smile on his face. There was no need to exchange words, Sanam and Rengoku blitzed at Zhu together. The sparring session continued after that, growing more and more intense with each second. The Hashriyas all had incredible endure, so fighting for an hour was nothing to them. But after the hour mark, something suddenly changed again. This time, the change was more drastic than when Zhu first revealed his 11th form. A new color appeared on the battlefield. A blur of purple. Living myth, 3rd POV, the Hashiras saw a new color flash in the battlefield. If that was not enough to tell them someone had entered the battle, their instincts immediately came alive, their bodies knew that they had to perform their best against the new entity. There you are. We have been waiting. Sanemi screamed, and his arm blurred in an arc that created a wave of typhoon that ripped the ground to shreds. Rengoku barely caught a glimpse, he only saw a streak of purple rushing at Sanemi, which completely disappeared right before meeting against Sanemi's attack. It was like a ghost, an illusion. In the very next instant, purple appeared behind Sanemi. This time, the color was not in motion, so he could see the full body. It was the silhouette of a man with 2 glowing orbs in place of an eye. During battles, Seiji utilized his eyes to fight, which made them glow an eerie purple and gave him a very distinctive feature. Yet before Seiji could do anything, a swing of a blue sword came from his right side. The sword left a trail of blue, and Zhu flashed a visible smile seeing Seiji. Welcome back, Zhu muttered. Untrained eyes would believe that the sword successfully cut Sage, but the result would prove them wrong. There was not a single scratch on him, his flawless skin remained the same. Seiji had dodged the swing with a mere centimeter away from cutting him. Such a close dodge seemed like pure luck, yet it was not. Although it looked close, the distance between Seiji and the sword might as well be measured in light years. It was not luck, simply absolute mastery over swordsmanship. Right then, Rengoku also took action. He exploded with the intensity of an inferno and swung at the left side of Seiji. The sword came swiftly, slicing through the air with such precision that it produced a whistling sound. Seiji's eyes never blinked and saw the world in its most simplistic state. He did not even pull out his sword yet, he merely sifted his entire weight on one leg and hit Rengoku's sword at the side with his finger. The attack was precise, but it had only linear force. So when Seiji lightly tapped at the side of the sword, it changed trajectory and arced towards Ju. Cling. In the end, Rengoku and Ju clashed instead. Stop playing with us. Sanemi bellowed and threw an upward slash that forced Seiji to leap high in the air. The force of the swing created a gust of wind that pushed him further than he expected. Okay. Seiji muttered to himself, checking his body to make sure no wind blades left a scratch on him. Finally, he pulled out his sword fully from the sheath. He held the sheath on his left hand and the sword on the right. He was using the weapon with only one hand. There were 3 Hashiras in front of him, which would be a Kaza level in terms of demons. But Seiji always did find human opponents to be easier to deal with. Aren't we going to stop? He just got here, maybe we should say hi or something? Rengoku asked, but the other 2 did not heed his words. They only flashed a small knowing smile. As someone who had gone on long missions with Seiji, they knew action was the same as talking to him. And even if they say their greetings, their words would fall on deaf ears anyway. Hence it was better this way. Rengoku released a sigh before he pulled up his sword and got into position. Then in a sudden action akin to lightning, the 3 shot towards him. They inhaled sharply and used their respective breathing styles. Wind breathing, 3rd form, water breathing, 5th form, flame breathing, esoteric art. Seiji was taken aback when he saw the intensity at which they came. His eyes saw the forms they were going to use before they even executed them. So by the time they came, he was already ready for a reply. Let's test this out, Seiji thought to himself, and a wide grin came upon his usually stoic face. Sun breathing, 9th form, the air turned into intense flames as Seiji burst forth with endless momentum. He was almost as fast as when he used thunder breathing. But unlike thunder breathing, his movement was not only fast but also fluid and precise, like water breathing. They also release an intense force that disrupts the air in the atmosphere, producing violent hurricanes, like wind breathing. Each step he took was firm and unyielding. He didn't look like a feather that was moving fast, but a heavy boulder that was moving fast despite its immense weight. It was like stone breathing. There was an unending heat in his movement, one that caused goosebumps to appear to those who faced him. It was burning, like flame breathing. Yet it was unlike his unusual mixed breathing. Mixed breathing combines the best of breathing styles to their utmost limit. But this was just a single style of breathing that happened to have the attributes of all breathing styles. It was not quite as fast as thunder breathing, not quite as precise as water breathing, nor as powerful as stone breathing. But it had everything. That was the forms of sun breathing. Clean storm wind tree, blessed rain after drought, purgatory. The 3 Hashriyas, the pinnacle of humanity, launched a consecutive attack on Seiji. Their fierce attacks turned cataclysmic upon combining. Seiji replied to the attacks. Dragon head dance, a trail of brilliant red and yellow traced the hypnotic movement of Seiji. It was fast like thunder breathing but with the precision and fineness of water breathing. So although it was moving so quickly, it looked like the attack was flowing slowly while the world stilled. The 3 Hashiras looked upon the scene with wide eyes. Seiji fully predicted every action they were going to take and had countered every attack before they even happened. It was like a cut scene in a video game. They followed the script while Seiji maneuvered between them, like water, yet with the strength of a mountain. The sound of scorching flame could be heard as the trail of yellow morphed into a dragon head at the end. All ended in an instant. What the hell was that? Sanemi was the first to ask as he looked up. His eyes were shaking with veins popping in them. I don't know, I've never seen anything like it before, Ju remarked. I think I know what that was, Rengoku said, and they all turned around to look at Seiji, who was not even looking at them but was gazing at his own sword. They just had their attacks cancelled and suppressed before they could bloom into action, but they had not time to linger on that thought. They stood up straight in silent awe. Sun breathing, Rengoku said. He had read about it in the book his ancestors left behind. It didn't have the exact details, but all the forms of sun breathing were described in vivid detail, so Rengoku could recognize it immediately. So that's the key, huh? Ju said in realization. They all looked upon the myth that came to life. A sun-breathing user. Strong comrades, Seiji's POV, well, that's that. I said, trying to stay calm after I just pulled off that cool shit. Like I always said, it was cool only until you acknowledge it. It's good to see you all training so hard to improve. You will surely need more strength for the upcoming battles, I said while gazing upon the three Hashiras. The sun was hung in the middle of the sky, lighting up the endless expanse with a color of serene blue. There was hardly any cloud in the sky, it was a clear summer day. The Demon Slayer headquarters was a small compound hidden between mountains. The place had many traditional houses for the servants and the Kasugai crows living here, while the main headquarters stood as the biggest structure in the middle of the compound. The headquarters training ground was located at the back of the compound in the south. The entrance held the Kasugai crows so intruders could be spotted instantly, therefore it was the back that needed the most protection. The training gourd was rather simple, with a huge open space made of cobblestones, and you could see wooden dummies and weapons one could use for training. Tall trees stood tall occasionally, providing shade where people could rest. Although I am not keen to use sparring to greet each other, I'm glad it shows you are safe and healthy. Jewel was the first one to greet me back with a sentence. Bastard, you got stronger again, was what Sanemi said next. I flashed a small smile at both of them before my eyes met with Rengoku. I could see that he was still shocked and had many questions going through his mind. He slowly came up after a short silence and asked. Is what I said true? He stopped in front of me. Was that the lost technique of sun breathing, or are my eyes playing tricks on me? I did not reply instantly, and instead cast a serious look at him. Then my mask slowly cracked as I smiled a childish smile of excitement. Like a child showing off his new toy to his best friend. You are right, I said, and I saw his breathing stop. I've reinvented the sun breathing. Ha 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 ha. A loud laugh soon filled the training ground as Rengoku let out a hysterical laugh. It was a mix of pride, relief and awe. My father said no one would use sun breathing again and that it was lost in time. Therefore, the demons would never be truly defeated. But here you are, you did the impossible again, Seiji, Rengoku said and flashed his usual smile, albeit a bit brighter. Can you tell me what this sun breathing is and why it's so important again? Sanemi asked as he and Ju walked up to me. Here you are, a demon slayer of the highest rank, yet you don't even know what sun breathing is. Ju said with a flat face. He did not even look at Sanmei while he talked. What? Am I supposed to know what that is? Sanmei said. No, it's just that I would expect a Hashira to be aware of this. I was just surprised you made it this far without even knowing the roots of breathing styles. Shut up. Sanmei snarked back. He did not fully understand the situation, but he knew that Ju was calling him dumb again in that elaborate way of his. You wanna go again? He fumed. It's not the time anymore, Sanemi. And don't worry, I can explain it to you, Rengoku said to calm him down. Fire calming down the wind was kind of funny. You would think that the flame Hashira would be the short-tempered one and the wind Hashira would be gentle, like airbending monks. But in reality, it was the opposite. You see, 500 years ago, the demon slayers did not have breathing styles. They would fight the demons with their limited strength, and as one would guess, they were losing really badly against the demons. That was until a powerful swordsman emerged. His name was Yorichi. Yorichi created the first breathing style, sun breathing, to fight against demons and give humans the ability to fight against demons on equal grounds. But no one was able to learn sun breathing, not even the first Hashiras. Yorichi had to help each of them create their own breathing styles, an inferior version of the sun breathing. These breathing styles are what we now know as the 5 major breathing styles, Rengoku explained. Since no one was able to learn sun breathing itself and only a variation of it, the legendary sun breathing was thought to have died with Yorichi. Rengoku added, well, that was until Seiji here reinvented it, I guess. Both Ju and Sanemi were left speechless for a moment. How did you learn it? Ju asked, and they turned to me curiously. I explained, you all know that I have mastered all 5 breathing styles, right? They nodded. After I mastered all of them, I began seeing the similarity amid the drastic difference in each breathing style. At the end of the day, although they were different, they had the same origin and they all led me to it, I said. And one day, it just clinked, I said. Do you happen to fight an upper moon on that day? Rengoku asked. Yes, I smiled. They were all warriors and knew that the greatest innovations often came at the gravest moment. I see, so it's like fitting back a puzzle, Rengoku said thoughtfully. Do you think we can learn it too? Sanemi asked quickly. Of course. But I believe that would not be a good idea. You have trained your body and instincts to fit the wind breathing, it will be like trying to unlearn a habit and learning a new one, I said. Or like destroying a building to build a bigger one, Ju added a better comparison. Exactly, so even if I were to teach sun breathing, it would be better to find someone who has not trained at all. I finished my point. Have you folded this to Lord Ubuyashiki? Rengoku asked. No, I said, I was trying to do that actually, which is why I came here first instead of the Flower Mansion. But I see that Lord Ubuyashiki is not here, I said. His condition is getting worse, he didn't even show his face yesterday and Lady Amain came in his place, Ju said. I see, I said, a phrase which I found fitting to me and have been using it constantly recently. Where's Tengen and Jyomiai? I asked next. They went on a mission together. Speaking of which, I should probably tell you about the new program that we have, Ju said and informed me about what they discussed yesterday. Apparently, it was a Form OS training for the Hashiras. The news that I killed another upper moon had bred a sense of need for improvement amongst the Hashiras. The news that I killed the upper moon was not as impactful since obviously someone who killed the upper moon too can kill a lower rank one, but TI still was quite a shock to the Hashiras who had never even encountered an upper moon. So they decided to pair 2 Hashiras on a mission and let them learn from each other. I was sure Ubuyashiki got this from me, where whenever I went on a joint mission with a Hashira, I learned their techniques and breathing styles. He was trying to replicate that. Although it might not be as progressive as mine, the strategy was still good. If they did not get stronger, at least they would have better teamwork and connection which could turn the tides of 100 battles. How was it? The upper moon you killed, Sanemi asked me. We were already sitting under the shade of one of the trees beside the training ground. We all sat in the 4 directions of the tree, surrounding it. Weak, I blurted out while recalling my fight with Jotaro and Daki. Or could that even be called a fight? I'm sure, you can all match its combat strength alone. Luckily, not all upper moon are monsters like Doma, I said. But fighting an upper moon is always tricky, so it will be necessary to have 2 Hashiras if you want to slay it properly, I said. How so? They asked. First of all, the upper moon were 2 in 1 demon. They were brothers and sisters. They can die only if you cut both of their heads at the same time, I said, or make sure the other has no time to heal while you cut off the head of the other, but most importantly, their blood demon art. The demon had a poison blood spells, 1 scratch is enough to kill you, I said. So even if you match in combat strength, you will probably die in a fight, I said. After all, you can't fight someone your equal or someone slightly weaker than you and come out unscratched. To not sustain any injury in a fight would require you to be overwhelmingly stronger. That was why although Jotaro's combat power was not too high, he could bring down warriors stronger than him. I understand, that do seem like trouble, Jo said thoughtfully. At that moment, Rengoku burst out laughing, not for Tengen though. He has poison resistance, you really believe it when he said that? Sanemi scoffed. What? He told me that he was from a shinobi family, so they trained from a young age to be immune to poison, Rengoku said. Wait, when did he tell you this? Jo asked. A while ago, while drinking in a restaurant. He said I was his friend so he shared his past with me, Rengoku said. But how come he never told me? Jo became depressed. What do you think, Eyes? Sanemi asked me. It's probably true. Tengen did have abundant white blood cells and a stronger immune system, I said to confirm, and Sanemi nodded, trusting my words. We sat under the tree, taking about random things and sharing stories of OU travels. It was a nice and quiet moment as we let our body recover from the spar. Oh, and please be ready, I'm going to call a Hashira meeting as soon as possible if the master allows it. I have important information to share, I said. Sure thing. So I guess that means no mission even tomorrow, really? Then wanna go for some more rounds? Rengeki, being the training freak he was, asked. Since he had no mission tomorrow, it was okay to be tired. Who do you think you are talking to, a newbie? I was born ready. Sanemi said and jumped from his seat. The two of them waste no time as they blurred towards the center of the training ground to fight against each other. Do they ever get tired? I said with a helpless shake of my head. I had a small smile at their antics. Different personalities may be different, but they have the same intensity that matches perfectly. You too? I asked when I saw Jo also getting up and walking towards the training ground. Of course, we can't let you get too far ahead, he said and joined the training. I could only smile wider and release a sigh, internally grateful to have comrades like them. The stronger they are, the more certain victory. Surprise, Seiji's, POV, you've returned, Shinobu said when she saw me enter the flower mansion through the small entrance at the back. It was not the main entrance, so only a few would use it to enter the mansion. I was already quite famous among the Demon Slayer Corps, so I did not want to bother with the people I would meet if I took the front gate. I responded to her call by stopping in my place and looking at her as if I had the capacity to hear whatever she was saying. If one were to compare how Shinobu looked right now with how she was a few months ago, they would surely be perplexed at the drastic change. It was not just a change in her appearance or fashion, it was a metamorphosis of her vibe altogether. She was much more mature now, and her emotions couldn't be noticed without eyes like mine. She had a permanent smile on her face, a great mask, that hid every other real emotion she might have had. Or was it a change? Maybe it's just growth. A growth which came when her older sister was bound to the bed and all the responsibility of the medical team fell on her shoulder. The kind of growth that came when she became a Hashira and now had to bear the responsibility of countless lives. A year ago, she would have leapt at me before I even crossed the door and asked me to experiment or spar with her while telling me endless information about what happened while I was gone. But now she sat on the veranda of the back of the mansion, her legs dangling in the air because she was too short to reach the ground. Her haori was the exact replica of her sister's, it had a beautiful butterfly pattern. Her eyes were not only exotic in their color but also their shape. She had no pupils and her eyes looked like that of an insect. It was unnatural, but attractive at the same time. I took a moment to take in the view of her, etching it into my memory. Welcome back, she said, a small smile on her tilted face. She used a smile as a mask, but my eyes saw that this one was genuine. There was a smile behind the smile. And here I thought you'd be busy since they said you were exempted from the training program, I said, walking inside the compound. What do you mean? I was awfully busy until 5 minutes before you arrived, she said, and her smile showed a toothy grin. Is that so? I said, and I turned my head around the compound. My eyes perceived through the walls as I observed the mansion deeply, checking on the residents and even the patients. I smiled. Thank you for your hard work. I bowed my head slightly when I stood in front of her. She let out a deep sigh and took in a greedy breath afterwards, trying to take in my scent. It was an instinctive action that came from the relief of seeing me away for the brain to prove my existence in front of her. How have you been? I asked. Good, and like I said, busy. I'm more curious about what was so important that you couldn't even return to enjoy the reward of slaying another upper moon, she said. You'll know soon enough, in the upcoming Hashira meeting, I said. Soon? She questioned. Yes, I sent Raven to Lord Ubuyashiki and requested another Hashira meeting, I said. I have not received a reply or a confirmation, but I knew he would surely allow my small request. I see, she said. She copied that phrase from me. So. I began, and immediately I felt my heartbeat go off rhythm. My throat clogged up for reasons not of logical nature as I asked. How is she? Shinobu allowed a place for silence after my words fell. Silence for me was inaction, and Shinobu was simply staring at me without doing anything. In the end, she smiled again. Why don't you see for yourself, she said. There was this knowing look in her eyes that warned me to expect something. Whether to expect something good or something bad, I did not know. So I stepped up on the veranda while Shinobu stood up, and then we went towards Kane's room. The smell of medicine and cold steel was the first thing I noticed when the door was opened. Then I was greeted with the sight of a room, which actually looked like a normal room this time instead of a hospital ward. There were books neatly arranged on the table with other things like flowers and decorations. The medical equipment was all gone now and only the force stand was left behind. I slowly walked towards the only bed in the room and I saw the girl lying on it. Kane. She looked much healthier now. Her cheeks were flushed and each breath looked to go in and out with ease now. Her lung injuries were significantly better. The bruises on her face and the bandages were gone as well, her elegant features had regained their beauty. She looked like a sleeping beauty on that bed. My eyes glowed a little as I examined her body. She was fine, in fact, it looked like she was not in a coma anymore and was just simply sleeping. I went even closer to her. I was already standing right beside her bed. I snaked my hand inside the blanket and took hold of her hand. They were warm and soft. Shinobu came with a chair in her hand and placed it next to me. I sat on it while still gripping Kane's hand. I'm glad, I said with a relieved chuckle. I finally closed my eyes and rested my forehead on her unmoving body. She's okay. She's fine. I stayed like that for a while, appreciating the fact that Kane was making a recovery and that I had not failed in my endeavor, at least not fully. I only looked up when I felt the slightest movement of her body. What was that? I asked. Then I felt it again. There was a twitch in her hand and I could feel it. I could also feel at that exact moment, my heart beating like a drum. Was she waking up? I know it was cliché, Sleeping Beauty waking up when the prince was beside her. But the shallowness of her breath and the twitch of her muscles told me that she was all but awake. Did she really wake up at the perfect time when I visited her? I inched my face ever so slowly closer to hers. My eyes narrowed until they turned into slits as I peered at her face. I found no flaws. I was not looking at them, but I thought I should mention it. She was beautiful. I was only a few inches away from her face when my eyes caught the movement of her face. She turned her head slightly in my direction and puckered her lips. My eyes saw everything in slow motion, but I was too surprised to react. She blew at my eyes. The rush of air caused my eyes to blink instinctively. It was only a millisecond of darkness, but when I opened my eyes again, I saw Kane's lips were no longer puckered. It was curving. She was smiling. Boo, she yelled suddenly after that. Ah, right, you are deaf. No use yelling to scare you, she said to herself afterwards. What is he doing? Is he still here? She then asked while turning her head to the side where Shinobu was standing. Yeah, Shinobu let out a peal of laughter. I think he is too shocked. He had the same face as when Kaneo called him father, does he? Kane said and turned back to me. Actually, the angle was a bit off, proof that she was not seeing me. I can imagine that, she said, and her smile turned even wider. You're awake. My voice must have come out low and unsure. Damn it, I wanted to sound confident and charming when I talked to her again. And you are smiling, I said, and my breath hitched. Her amused smile turned softer and gentler as the hand I had been holding all this time held me back. Of course, I'm smiling, she said. You are here and you saved me. It was phenomenal what those sentences did to me. I finally released the breath I had been holding and my body relaxed. I knew it was a ridiculous speculation, but I was expecting her to be sadder and even blame me for her blindness. Like how I have been blaming myself. But the first thing she did was wrap me in a hug. I could feel her warmth, which had returned after enduring the frigid coldness of demonic ice. Thank you, Seiji, she said sincerely. But the next sentence that followed was uttered with her whole heart. I love you, Sleeping Beauty. Third POV, the last thing she remembered was the hazy whiteness of a frigid cloud as she desperately tried to feel the warmth of his embrace. Against the demon who seemed impossible to overcome, she did her best, honoring her title as a Hashira. But the cold consumed everything so quickly. She felt her mind slipping into an endless pit that swallowed her whole. By all means she thought she was dead. It would have been a good way to die too, fighting against the evil being that took her family until her last breath. It was the death dreamt by many warriors. Her sister was already grown and strong, and although she would miss her dearly, she knew her sister could take her place and bear the responsibilities. Kaneo was also already smiling and had healed from all her trauma. Her patients would be fine, her friends and fellow Hashira were also there to continue the war she gave her life to. The only regret she would have had was Seiji. She never properly got to confess her feelings to him. She was too scared and didn't want to bear the tragic consequence of her mistake. That was only it. So as she felt her consciousness slipping away, she was expecting the cold grasp of death. And she welcomed it with open arms. But then she woke up. She was not dead. But she might as well be, because although she was conscious, she couldn't move even a single muscle in her body. It was like her body was already dead, but her mind lingered in the realm of the living. It was lonely inside her body, it was dark and numb. She couldn't feel anything else except the silence of her thoughts. It was horror. She did not know how long she stayed like that because oftentimes she would pass out, only for her consciousness to return to the body that was not ready to host it. Again and again. But after what she could only speculate to be a day or two, she felt the sensation of touch. That feeling of cessation was soon followed by the breaking of silence as well. She could now hear and feel the touch. They were two of her sense she would ever truly need because of the people she felt beside her immediately. Her sister Shinobu and Seiji. Are you sure she is going to feel comfortable with that? It was a distinct voice which she recognized instantly due to the weird donation and perfect pronunciation. I'm positive she can't feel anything either way. She knew that voice as well. It was Shinobu. Doesn't mean we should let her be. Seiji said before he adjusted her head and he took away the double pillow so she could lay more relaxed. See? Look how more relaxed she is, Seiji made a point. Yes, it does look that way, to us at least, Shinobu said. Kane was still living in a world of darkness, but she could clearly feel the presence of these two. They were the two most important people in her lives. They were like the sun in the dark and unmoving space. She felt less lonely with that. She then felt someone grab her hand. From the size of the hand and roughness, she could tell that it was Seiji's. And we are going to use this as my own pillow, Seiji said, and she could feel a weight on her side. She imagined him to lay his head on her side. Are you going to spend the night like that again? Shinobu asked. I guess so. I don't want her to feel lonely. She is not waking up anytime soon, Seiji. She is not aware that she is lonely. Besides, I will frequently visit her to check and replace her IVs, Shinobu said. But still. You know you should rest on your own bed to recover, Shinobu said. I wouldn't get a wink of sleep there anyways, but I can sleep peacefully here, was Seiji's reply. I guess it can't be helped then. Would you like me to get a futon? Or maybe I can ask the servants to put another bed beside her. No, this is fine, Shibi, okay. Then have a good night, Seiji. I'm going to patrol through the wards to check on the other patients, Shinobu said before leaving the room. Kane could now hear everything around her, so she was aware of what was happening. Good night, and soon after that, there was silence, and Kane also allowed her consciousness to rest once more. Days went by after that. She could hear and feel but not move just yet. She would occasionally awaken in her unresponding body and in the world of darkness. But at those times, she no longer felt lonely because there was a constant presence beside her. Arise, REC, arise. There was never a lonely moment with Seiji and his antics. He was always talking to her and treating her as if he knew she was conscious. Maybe he knew. I wonder which would you prefer? Maybe an innocent voice, or maybe a voice that is deep like a villain's. The time her consciousness was awake was often times because his talks had woke her up. Most of it was filled with him practicing his speech to sound better so that when she finally wakes up, she would still find him charming. It was a ridiculous goal with an even more ridiculous speculation. She did not fall in love with him just because of his appearance. It was much deeper than that. But she found it adorable nonetheless. She couldn't wait for her body to recover fully so that she could move around again and react to all his hard works. She'd be sure to compliment his manly voice after she woke up. Besides that, in some other times, he would confess the most embarrassing things to her as well. On second thought, she was pretty sure he did not know that she was aware. You want to know the reason why I did not want to spar with you in the beginning? And why I lose every single time even when I agreed to spar? Seiji once asked her. Well, it's embarrassing, so I will tell you now when you can't hear me, he said, and she could feel the blush in his voice. It's because my eyes are special. I've hidden it all these years, but I am capable of seeing through things, like the walls, the ground, the ceiling, and other things including your clothes, he confessed. At first, she was amazed that his eyes could do such a thing. She always knew he had powerful eyes, but seeing through objects, was that even possible? Was it like demonic spells? But then the latter part threw all curiosity out of the way as she became extremely bashful. Yeah, it's impossible to fight you with your tits bouncing around so enticingly, he said, causing her to want to scream. Also, I wonder why flower breathing has so many attack patterns where you have to do splits, he said. The embarrassment was too much that she nearly broke her human limits and jumped off the bed to run away or hide behind the blankets. Anyways, yes, that's how it is. Although I never use my X-ray vision to check out girls, I swear on Musen's name. I only had to use it on you because you were powerful and it is the only way I can defeat you, he added. She discovered many things in these talks that Seiji had with her. Sometimes they were embarrassing, and other times, they were cute too. Another day, he said. I seriously used to have a big crush on you. I mean, how could I not? Every boy at one point always have a thing for older ladies. And you were the perfect, textbook, manifestation of an older girl, and Wani-san, he laughed while she felt a bit giddy inside. You always talk about how much I helped you, how I always cared for your safety or how I saved you. But those are not true. I know that even without my existence you would have done fine, Seiji said. Well, maybe except for Doma, it has always been you who helped me instead. Forget about the big ways that you helped me, it's the little things that made you dear to me. How you always sweat my torn clothes after every messy mission, cut my hair despite my picky nature of wanting things to be perfect, patiently help me learn how to sing songs, and how you secretly picked up ontology, in hopes of finding a cure for my deafness, Seiji said, and his usually robotic voice held a quiver of emotion. The only reason why I didn't fall in love was because of my cowardly nature. I didn't have the bravery to love you because I knew the risk, I knew your fate. And I was afraid to love you until we escaped that. It's cowardly, isn't it? But I just don't want to feel the pain of losing again. It's the same thing I did to my parents, get close to them while putting certain barriers to ensure my safety, he said. I know, I'm pathetic. And sometimes, she wished she could get out of the bed and give him a hug. It's another beautiful day, isn't? He said to her one morning. You'll probably hate me after you wake up, because you won't be able to see a beautiful morning. I'm sorry I was not enough, I should have tried harder, I should have done more. She wanted to tell him that it was fine and that she could never hate him. He was doing the thing again, where he blames himself for everything that was wrong in this world. He felt that he was some special chosen one or something that was responsible to make the world better. She was not sure how he got that idea either, but that's just how he was. I promise I will get your eyes back. There are many ways we can do that, would you like to hear it? He asked. And he would go on a long rant on how he could help her get her eyes back. Sometimes, he went into such details that she couldn't understand what he was saying or how he knew the many things that he knew. But what she understood from all was that he was doing his best to find a way to heal her. She wanted so badly to let him know that it was fine, that she didn't mind losing her eyes because at that moment, she was able to save him by sacrificing those eyes. She could live with that consequence with a smile for the rest of her life. He didn't have to blame himself. He did not have to feel like he had not done enough. Because he had done everything. I love you, she wanted to say it back. I love you too. After a few weeks or so, Kane was finally able to move her body again. It happened while Seiji himself was away. At first, she moved her fingers, her hands, and then her entire arm. When she felt control return to every part of her body, she pulled away the bandage in her eyes. She opened her eyes. Nothing. It was not even darkness, it was nothing. She saw nothing. But that was okay, she expected it. So she opened her mouth and swallowed hard to wet her parched throat. Shinobu, she called out. Shinobu. And in no time, she heard her sister slam open the door. You're awake, and then a hug she did not see coming. I missed you, I'm so glad. Kane could no longer see her sister, but she could still feel her. She could still feel the love, the relief, and the tears that fell from her eyes. She hugged her sister back after a long time. Chapter 111. Note, this is chapter 111, right after Kane woke up. I missed this post and skip it. My fault. This is not the extra chapter, by the way. I will adjust the sequence later. Seiji's POV. How long have you been awake? It took me a while to get over the shock of seeing her awake and smiling so brightly, but after a few minutes of pause during which the two sisters constantly laughed at me, I was finally functioning like a normal human being again. Whatever that was. But I still couldn't get the red off my ears though. I did not see them, but they were like burning coal at the side of my head. It was the lingering effect of her confession. I mean, who wakes up after months of being in a coma and says they love you? Not long. Actually, it has not even been a day since I was first able to move my body, she said. We haven't even informed Lord Abuyashiki yet, nor most of the residents of the Flower Mansion. She was half sitting on the bed in the room while I sat on the side of the bed and directly faced her. The sun had fully set on the horizon, so the room was lit up by yellowish electrical lights. She did not have a bandage around her eyes anymore, instead, her eyes were closed. She also had her signature small smile on her face, which was lit up by the golden light. It was permanent and it looked more like a facial feature than an expression. You couldn't imagine Kane without smiling. Why is that? I asked, speaking very well in my deaf opinion. Me waking up is kind of a big thing for everyone, I'm lucky so many people cared about me. But Shinobu wanted to make sure I was fully rested and healthy again before revealing it to others, she said. She was a little thinner and paler than the I remembered. It was proof that although she had woken up, she had not fully recovered. I could understand that a big fuzz and endless visitors were the last thing she needed right now. Shibi probably still wanted to nurse you peacefully too, I said. Speaking of which, Shinobu had immediately excused herself after the laughter was over. She was sensible enough to know that we would like privacy since we both went through the battle together. But maybe such privacy was not a good idea. A beat of silence descended between us. I seemed to be the only one who felt awkward with that because Kane tilted her head and showed an expression of amusement. Like she knew a joke that I didn't know. You know, I've never noticed it before, but you have a really nice voice, she said suddenly. The impact of her words was enhanced by the preluding silence. My ears, which felt like burning coal, changed and became the sun on both sides of my face. It was fortunate for me that Kane couldn't see because I was blushing hard. Yes, all the hard work paid off. I coughed a few times after that, both to collect myself and to stop myself from laughing out loud like a creepy villain who just succeeded in his plan. It has a nice depth, like dark chocolate, she said, her smile turning wider. You would think that she could see my reaction from her smile. Thank you for the compliment, I said. She finally giggled out loud after my graceful acceptance of praise. Her hand snaked on top of the blanket, searching for mine. I put my hand in front of hers and allowed her to find me. Her fingers wrapped around my hand immediately after that. Seiji, do tell me how things have been while I was asleep, she said. The moments that followed were no longer awkward even from my point of view. We started talking about all the things that happened while she was asleep. She got clues about all the things that happened so far as she and her Shinobu already had a talk. But she wanted to hear them from my perspective. Especially when it came to things like when Shinobu became a Hashira. Kane deeply regrets missing her sister's moment. It was like missing a graduation. But I told her everything in vivid detail, so it was like she was there. From what Shinobu said to me in the beginning, what her reactions were when Ubuyashiki crowned her with the title and so on. I told her everything. I even told her about the announcement that followed, how I awakened the Demon Slayer mark during my fight with Doma. It was nice to have a conversation with her again, see her smile, feel her touch and bask in her presence. It was reassuring to finally see that she was alive and that I succeeded in saving her. Demon activities have been rising ever since that day. The Demon Lord was angered by the fact that we killed his second strongest servant, I said to her, causing her to tense up and her grip became tighter. Yes, Shinobu has told me how the patience tripled and she has been busy to no ends, she said, her expression dropping. Yeah, this was how our world is. We couldn't even celebrate the joy of her waking up for an hour before some bad news had to be heard. For every life saved, 2 perished. And we were responsible for stopping this once and for all. I have to stop it all. But don't worry, I've gotten even stronger than before, I said to ease her. Like I said, my fight with Doma taught me a lot of things and allowed me to awaken the Demon Slayer Seiji. She said, maybe she was not convinced. And not only that, recently I found a way. I've mastered it, the art of slaying demons. They won't stand a chance next time, I said, referring to the sun breathing which finally finished reinventing. From the breathing concept, don't he the smallest form, I knew them now. Seiji. It's okay. I'll protect everyone next time, I said, looking at her closed eyes. And I'll do it perfectly, Seiji, she said, more strongly this time. Her hand reached out to my face, likely to close my mouth, but her hand landed on my cheek instead. She froze after she touched my face. There was silence. She ever so slowly moved her fingers around my face, tracing the scars that now ran across my forehead and down the middle of my eyes. They were flaws, a mark of imperfection in my ability to save others and myself. She looked sadder and sadder the more she felt my face. But it did not stop there, her hands moved down, feeling my neck and my chest. She was searching for scars on me and she did not have to put an effort because I still had scars everywhere. Most of them were healing and would disappear soon enough with the constant use of sun breathing, but for now, they still remained and could be felt. "You've done plenty, Seiji," she told me, her hands stopped feeling my body and returned to the top of mine. "But not enough obviously," I argued. "You saved me," she replied. "But not perfectly, you lost your eyes," I said, causing her to perk at my words. She couldn't argue with that, because it was true. She was living it. And I still feel guilty to this day for failing like that. "You still think that I will hate you for losing my eyes," she said, but no, she shook her head. "I love you more for saving me." I felt my breath hitched at her words. The insecurity and self-hate I have had ever since my failure slowly melted away under her warm touch and warmer words. "You wouldn't truly understand it until you were in the situation, but if you were anything close to a decent human, power naturally comes with responsibility. And I was lucky enough to have that power since birth. I did not mean my talent with the sword or my special eyes alone with this, but most importantly, my knowledge of the demon slayer world. So I was responsible. I was the only one who knew and who could save everyone. Others can't, no matter how willing they may be. It was not even about being a good person, rather being accountable for the power I had obtained. It was like a curse really, one I would never share with anyone in this world. I was not like this when I first decided to kill the demons. I did it out of spite and hatred alone. But the longer I bore the title of the Hashira, the more achievements I obtained and the more friends I made, the more slowly I changed. What started out personal and selfish slowly became a responsibility and selflessness. My hate too. At the start, I only hated the demons for what they did to me. But now, I also hated them for the things that could do and because of the people I love. I set off my journey with a fleeting hope and now that had bloomed and become a solid determination. You can be strong, but you don't have to be the only one who is strong. Remember, we are all in this together, I smiled. She couldn't see it so I grabbed her hand and put it on my lips so that she could feel the arch. She smiled back. "I'm glad you woke up," I said. "Me too," she said. Even if she woke up in darkness, she was glad. That eased me. Practicing sun breathing, Seiji's POV, the next day, now I really wanted to stay beside Kane for a longer period of time but that was a privilege I could not have just yet. Shinobu told me that her sister needed sleep and she couldn't do that while I was constantly beside her. So to fix that, Shinobu made a timetable where I could be beside Kane only for a limited amount of time. It was like visiting hours in a hospital. I guess every hospital did that for a reason. And although I liked to believe that my presence helped Kane to relax, I wasn't going to argue with Shinobu who was a professional and also probably loved and cared for Kane more than I did. In the meantime, I wasn't idle as I decided to train in the open ground of the flower mansion. Sun breathing, clear blue sky, the movements flow with the elegance of water. The action took place at the speed of thunder. The attack had the intensity of a raging flame with the violence of the wind. And the force it held could pulverize stone. I spun my body swiftly and unleashed a circular slash that left a trail of bright yellow flames, the color of the sun. My deaf ears could almost hear the crisp sound of space burning with each stroke of my blade. It was thrilling and intoxicating. Sun breathing, raging sun, I gripped my long sword with both hands and released two opposite horizontal slashes that were too fast that it looked like they happened at the same time. A burning arc of yellow carved a mark on the ground. Sun breathing, beneficent radiance, I leapt into the air. My limbs spiraled as if my body had gone out of control. But unlike how it looked. Each movement was deliberate and meaningful. It was a lot like a dance. It was a beautiful attack that unleashed ribbons of yellow flame in the sky. A final show of kindness before my blade took the head of my enemies. Sun breathing, fire wheel, my dance in the air swiftly changed its pattern. Now I moved in one direction with all the force I had. I spun in the air, creating a wheel of fire with my blade. I landed on the ground with a soft thud before I continued practicing sun breathing until I mastered them to perfection. My movement looked like a dance, an exact replica of Hinakami Kagura, but that slowly changed as my attacks differed from just a simple dance. It soon became a set of attacks I had, ready to be unleashed upon any deserving demon that I encountered. I started early in the morning, right after Shinobu allowed me to have breakfast with Kane, where I fed her foods like she often did to me while I was younger. The healthy blush on her face throughout started my morning perfectly. But by the time I decided to stop my training, the sun was already past its highest point. It was afternoon. I had trained continuously for at least 6 hours. And when I say continuously, I mean it literally. There was no water break, no pause, or a moment of respite. It was a constant movement. Different forms of sun breathing left me like a waterfall, and I never stopped until now. Sun breathing was vastly different from my version of mixed breathing in this aspect. It was literally impossible to get tired while using sun breathing because it followed the same concept as stone breathing. You get stronger and stronger the longer you fight. It was a continuous application of power that snowballed into what seemed like infinite power. Obviously, it had limits, but you'd never find that out because the enemy would have been dead. And also, it was because sun breathing was not as intense as mixed breathing. You see, every breathing style originated from sun breathing, but that doesn't mean that sun breathing was a combination of all the breathing styles. Well, it kind of is, but at the same time, it was not. It's tricky. Sun breathing was the jack of all trades, master of none, of breathing styles. It could not compare to water breathing in precision, thunder breathing in speed, or stone breathing in raw power. But it had all of them, just on a minor scale. That meant it had more speed and power than water breathing, more precision and power than thunder breathing, and more speed and precision than stone breathing. Truly a jack of all trades and master of none. Upon this discovery, I questioned the statement that no one could learn sun breathing. I thought, maybe everyone could learn it, but Yorichi back then did not want to share his exact techniques. But further use of sun breathing taught me something that cleared my misunderstanding. It was not that no one was strong enough, fast enough, precise enough, explosive enough, or courageous enough to learn sun breathing. They were. But no one was all of this at the same time. Some people are born strong and precise but not fast. Some were born explosive but not fast. Every warrior that ever lived had one of these attributes that they excelled at, but they also always lacked one of them. Sun breathing requires a person to be multi-talented in all these aspects at the same time. They have to be fast, strong, precise, etc., at the same time. While most people are only either fast, strong, precise, and so on. Due to this reason, people couldn't learn sun breathing, and it was much better for them to master one of the attributes they had, sharpen their limited talent instead of focusing on all of them. But Yorichi was a genius unlike everyone else, so he could easily learn sun breathing. He had the best talent in every imaginable way. The same applied to me. The fact that I could master all 5 major breathing styles was proof that I was talented in every aspect, much like Yorichi. It was a skill issue that others couldn't learn sun breathing. It was not that Yorichi was a superhuman, although he was, it was not the reason why others couldn't learn sun breathing. But in the unique aspect that each sub-breathing style decided to focus on, they all surpassed sun breathing. It was an obvious result since the forms of sun breathing were created by one person 500 years ago, but other breathing styles had centuries to improve, by different users through the generations. Sun breathing was overpowered only as a breathing style and not as a technique. The techniques were outdated. My version of mixed breathing, if I were to successfully mix all the 5 breathing styles together, would be the superior version of the sun breathing that Yorichi used. In the end, I learned that the sun breathing was not what made Yorichi overpowered. He was the one that made sun breathing overpowered instead. He could have used minor spark breathing and he'd still whoop the asses of everyone in the verse. He was just built different. The sun breathing was undeniably powerful, but it was not what made the legendary figure. I stopped my flow of movement when I noticed a small girl running up to me. Her purple eyes sparkled in the afternoon sun and there was a smile on her face. A smile so precious that it made me feel sorry that it existed in this demon-infested world. "Big brother, I finished making lunch," the girl said when she reached me. Kaneo sure gone. She was my adoptive little sister. "Come, let's eat," she invited me. I released my breath, halting the pattern of sun breathing, and I felt a small fatigue on my body. The early breeze of spring caressed my body, cooling my sweat as I felt a chill all over my body. "Thank you, Kaneo," I said and couldn't resist patting her head. I was careful not to stain her with the sweat covering my body. Kaneo silently enjoyed my touch for a moment before she grabbed my hand and removed it from her head. She was a big girl now, in her words, so I shouldn't treat her like a baby. She did not release my hand afterwards and pulled me towards the mansion. "When are you going to allow me to train with you?" she asked me while we walked to the mansion. I have noticed her gaze when I was training. She wanted to train with me seriously now, instead of getting guidance from Shinobu. I promised to train her when she got older, but she kept pestering me with this question. I don't know why. "You said you'd train me personally when I get older. I'm already 13, she said. Wait. Hold the fuck up. No way, my baby Kaneo is a teenager already. Who's 13? I asked. Kaneo stopped in her tracks and looked back at me with a stoic face. I turned 13 in May. It was during the time you were in bed, so you missed my birthday, she said, so confidently that I almost believed her. Ain't no way she is 13. I thought to myself. Until the realization slowly sank into my heart while I looked at her unamused purple eyes. Tanjiro was already around 13 when I saw him. He and Kaneo are in the same generation. Heck, I suddenly remembered Kaneo was slightly older than Tanjiro. What the fuck? I thought there was at least 5 more years between 12 and 13. Why was the age of 13 such a big leap from 12? Was it due to the fact that 13 is the beginning of the teenage years? I heard you were already a Hashira at my age. She commented. Right. Holy shit, when did she grow so fast? She still looked like the same little girl to me. Please stop growing and remain my cute little lowly sister I can spoil endlessly. In the end, I sighed. Okay, we will start your training soon too, I said. I was already planning on training Tanjiro, so I guess I could add Kaneo as a disciple. They were also of the same generation and everything. Kane gave me a bright smile after that and we continued towards the mansion. The upper moons, Seiji's POV, 2 days have passed since I returned to the flower mansion and the Hashira meeting which I requested to be held was granted. This time, even Shinobu was not exempted, she had to attend the meeting whether she liked it or not. Don't worry Shinobu, I'll be fine. I spend most of my time sleeping anyway, Kane said with a thin smile while looking at her sister. She was still on her bed, only ever leaving it to go to the bathroom. She was starting to eat normal food again, but that too only in a few quantities. Her body couldn't digest normal food just yet. I know that, but... said the girl who forbade me from staying beside her at all times. Now she understood what it felt like, justice was served. You're acting like here and the headquarters is not 2 hours away, I said with a shrug while observing the sisters. He is right, I'll be fine. I'm not made of glass you know, Kane agreed, causing Shinobu to release a defeated sigh. Okay then, I'll be back soon, she said before turning around and walking toward the door. Let's go quickly, she said right before walking past me. Make sure to tell me everything that happened in detail when you get back, Kane said while giving me the final wave. Of course, I said before I left the room too. Shinobu and I immediately made our way to the Demon Slayer headquarters. The journey was swift and we reached our destination in a little over an hour. When we arrived there, I was pleasantly greeted by my old partner whom I hadn't seen in a while. It did not even let out chirps like the rest of the birds around it. No, it refused to release a sound. Raven, I called out her name while she gently floated above. I lowered my head slightly and she immediately made herself comfortable on top of my head. My purple hair acted like a natural nest for her as she anchored her little feet on my scalp. After a few more nuzzles, she fit perfectly on my head. Thank you for delivering my message, I said. The bond you have with your bird always strikes me as odd. Nonetheless, it's adorable, Shinobu commented beside me. Well, not every demon slayer had to trust their Kasugai crow with their life as I did, I said, recalling all the times I got good sleep, knowing that Raven was keeping an eye out for me. There were also a few moments where she saved me from demons sneaking up from behind. Let's hurry. Everyone else is already there, I said, and we went past the entrance gate of the headquarters. There were guards and servants when we entered, but none of them stopped us. They knew who we were. Instead, they inclined their heads slightly when we passed them. It was a sign of respect for the warriors that were protecting them. We made a beeline to the main building without exchanging more words. When we reached there, all of the Hashiras were present, and this time, even Ubuyasuki was there. Seiji, Shinobu, you're here, Ubuyashiki heard us before he saw us. He turned his head to us with a smile. His white pupils could not see us clearly anymore, he was turning blind. That was why he heard us first. Sorry for making you wait, Shinobu bowed to the master and also to her fellow Hashiras. It's fine. We know your sister's condition and how busy the medical corps is these days. There is no need to apologize for anything, Jyomi said, his hands joined in prayer. He and Tengen were there too. I could feel their aura from miles away. I could see them from miles away. Jyomi stood in the middle, towering over everyone else like the absolute unit he was. Tengen's height followed, slightly shorter but still taller than the rest. And then Ju, Rengoku, and Sanemi were relatively similar in height. Shinobu and I joined them in the line they had assailed in, facing the veranda of the main building where Ubuyashiki sat with his wife. After that, we all went to one knee in unison. The Hashiras have gathered as you ordered, we said all together. Ubuyashiki threw his usual kind smile on his face. It was not an arrogant smile that was glad to see so many powerful warriors kneel before him, no, it was similar to how a father would smile at his children. They were warm and proud. It may seem like I was the one who called the meeting today, but in actuality, this time, the emergency Hashira meeting has nothing to do with me, Ubuyashiki explained in his weak voice that was barely making vibrations as they left his mouth. His head turned to me, although I was not sure if he could see me. It was Seiji, who called the meeting today. Everyone turned their head towards me after that, expecting me to explain why I had called them here. Seiji, if you will, Ubuyashiki nudged. I stood up and walked towards the side where everyone could see me without craning their neck too much. Then I started, thank you for coming together despite all your duties. I called you all here because I have information of utmost importance to discuss with you all. No one interjected, so I continued. During my short travel which was granted to me by Lord Ubuyashiki, I've discovered many things. And I wanted to share these with you as I believe they could ensure everyone's safety. Starting with, the information I had on every single upper moon, including all of their powers and weaknesses, I said, and immediately, I saw the expression on their faces change. Information about the upper moons was invaluable. After all, to know your enemy is the most important thing in war. Although I am infinitely curious about how you got information that we weren't able to get in centuries, I will trust you, Seiji, Ubuyashiki said, and I nodded to show appreciation. He was not asking me any questions on whether the information was really true or how I got it when he was probably trying to do this same thing for years. Instead, he was putting his trust in me. His logical mind gave me a rare pass. He had faith in what was supposed to be the pillar of pillars. I thought he would be harder to convince. I expected with all my heart for him to be more incredulous. It was why I didn't reveal what I knew back when we had the Hashira meeting after my fight with Doma. I needed to create an excuse as to how I got the information. It was kind of flattering actually. I continued, everyone already knows about Upper Moon 2 and Upper Moon 6, so I won't get into detail about them. I've slayed them as well, so it's irrelevant, so I'll start with Upper Moon 5, I said and took a pause. I looked at each of them, one by one, studying the varying degrees of emotions shown on their faces. I made sure they were all paying attention to what I was about to say next. Even the hot-headed Sanemi was quiet as he looked at me with rapt attention. Gyako, I said, the Upper Moon 5 is a demon called Gyako. Out of all the demons you would have encountered, he probably has one of the most grotesque appearances. He has a torso without limbs and his body is covered in scales like a fish. He has multiple baby arms growing from his back and his body is like a statue that extends from a pot, like the jinn in myths. His face is even more disturbing with a single eye in the place where he should have a mouth and two mouths located in where he is supposed to have eyes. He is an abomination, I said, recalling what the demon looked like from the manga. I went into details about their appearance because I wanted them to recognize him immediately if they ever saw him. His power includes teleportation using his pots and exceptional flesh manipulation. He also has an unknown amount of other abilities, but they are all related to his pots. He can summon demonic fish, the tentacles of an octopus, and can use water-based attacks. You should avoid getting hit by him at all costs as he has poison as well, I said. I allowed silence to settle amongst us as they digested my words. Then I continued. Overall, he is as strong as any of you. Luckily, he is the weakest amongst the Upper Moon and 2 Hashiras should be enough to slay him safely. After I said that, I could almost see question marks forming above their heads. Everyone had their own sets of questions they wanted to ask. They raised their hands. I will answer all your questions after I say everything, so please wait, I said. The answers to their question might be answered automatically as I discuss more about the Upper Moons. Therefore I should finish everything I had to say first before taking questions. The Upper Moon 4 is a demon called Hantengu, I said. This one is a bit tricky and it should require multiple Hashiras to slay him without causality. Or, powerful demon slayers led by a Hashira. Hantengu's blood demon art allows him to separate himself into 7 demons, each representing one of the 7 negative emotions he had as a human. So although he is one demon, fighting him will be like fighting against 7 different demons, each having enough strength to rival a lower moon, I said. That's not all, each entity he splits into, they all have their own unique blood demon art, I finished. Man, that's some bullshit ability, Sanemi couldn't help but comment with a grumble. They were not completely new to demons making clones or splitting themselves, but this one was different in the sense that every single one is like its own individual demon with its own blood demon art. Indeed, Ubuyashiki mused thoughtfully, it's always harder to fight against these types of demons than demons that are just strong, but here's the trick to defeating him. Hantengu has a main body that represents the emotion of fear. This body is an absolute coward and won't fight back. Instead, he would shrink himself to the size of a needle and hide away so that no one can kill him. I said. Kill the main body, the demon that represents fear, and you kill the demon completely, I said. So it's not like Upper Moon 6 where you have to slice their head off at the same time, Ju asked. I nodded, correct, but that was not enough. I wanted them to know every important information there is to know, so that they could have the best chance of survival and hence victory. Hantengu usually multiply when you chop off his head, so beware of that. Then I'll explain the abilities of each of the representation clones, I said and paused to take a breath. I started explaining the abilities of each clone one by one. It took quite a lot of time as they all had individual demon art that did not correlate with each other. But I tried my best and I shared enough for them to be able to fight against the Upper Moon 4 with no surprises. So in summary, these are their abilities. Anger is lightning, pleasure is wind, sorrow can use spears, joy can fly and has sound-based attacks, hatred can manipulate wooden dragons and resentment can increase his size, I said. Everyone got that? I asked and they all nodded, but with varying degrees of sureness. The likes of Ubuyashiki and Tengen were certain, but Sanemi and Jyomiai were not too sure. I smiled. I should give them a pamphlet where I note down the important details. Okay, with those out of the way, let's discuss the truly dangerous ones. I would like to remind you that the gap in strength between the third and fourth upper moon is very big. The top three are in another realm of their own. They cannot be compared to the lower ranks, I said and took another pause to let my words sink in. If you encountered either one of the remaining two of the top three upper moon, then please run for your own safety. Try to save others but forget the idea of slaying them, I said. They all possessed power beyond even mine. I could see them gulp at my last words. I was in front of them, they could feel my strength and they had something to comapre the demons to. If the two demons were stronger than me, how absurdly strong were they? In truth, I was already stronger than Akaza, I was sure. But they haven't really seen my fight at my full power. So in their respective, what I said was true. Let's start with Upper Moon 3. I said and took a deep breath before I even uttered the name. I shot a glance at Rengoku. Akaza, Upper Moon, Seiji's POV, Akaza, a demon whom I needed to kill as quickly as possible, I thought to myself. I wasn't going to make the same mistake as I did with Kane and wait for him and Rengoku to clash. I would end the demon's life before they ever had the chance to clash. I tore my eyes off Rengoku and continued. Akaza is unlike the rest of the demons. He is probably the most humane demon amongst the upper moon, I said. He looks like any ordinary young man of medium height. He has pink hair and blue tattoos covering his body like the criminal tattoos he had as a human. I said. I could not remember any other distinctive feature he had. His strength is one that could rival mine. The scary part about this demon is that, unlike others, he does not heavily rely on his blood demon art. Instead, he is a warrior and a martial artist, the pinnacle of hand-to-hand combat, I said. His blood demon art allows him to create destructive shockwaves from any part of his body, and this unique ability makes his martial arts even more devastating. Everyone was busy with their own thought after hearing about Upper Moon 3. It was truly odd for a demon to not rely on their spells and have their own strength and techniques that are very similar to humans. Although Akaza had no tricks or complex abilities, he was strong enough to the point that those simply did not matter. He would square up with you and beat you fairly. Like I said before, Akaza is much more humane than the rest of the demons. If you ever encountered him, he would look for a good fight instead of immediately aiming for your life, I said. He is a battle junkie basically, like Sanemi? Ju asked. Yes, but even more passionate. Like Rengoku's passion for training, I said, and they all hummed in understanding. So in a fight, he won't end you right away and would prefer to savor the fight instead. He considered himself a warrior before a demon, so he might even give you the advantage for the sake of a fair duel. I said. I put a finger on my chin and thought more about what I knew of Akaza. The others waited for me to continue while digesting the informations. Then my eyes fell on Shinobu. Oh, and I said, he refuses to kill or eat women for whatever reason. So if you are a girl, you're probably safe from him unless the Demon King himself gave direct order. They all looked at me in disbelief. It was quite hard to wrap their heads around that an upper moon wouldn't kill women. Do you know why that is? Shinobu was the one who asked. Maybe he eats them in other ways? I shrugged, quite the opposite. I think he is just a gentleman. Regardless, don't put your faith in that fact. If you see him, just run. If you can't run, then stall him. I waved it off. After that, I went into a little more details about what I know. I tried to replicate the techniques he used in his fight against Rengoku from the manga and made sure they knew what to expect. I also described him a few more times with more vivid detail. Like his exact height, his clothes, and his hairstyle. I didn't think Akaza was the sneaky or trickster type. He would probably introduce himself as an upper moon, but it was better be safe than not. And lastly, one of the first demons in existence and the most powerful right after the demon king himself, I began and closed my eyes to dive into my memories. He has been the upper moon one ever since he became a demon. His strength is unmatched because even while he was a human, he was one of the strongest entities in the world. His immense threat is unquestionable. It is said that the demon lord himself never looked at him like a servant, he was too strong. It was more like a partnership since the start, I said. Kokashibo, the twin brother of the creator of breathing styles, Yorichi, I said. Just like I predicted, everyone was shocked to hear the revelation. Ubuyashiki was the most surprised out of all. I could see his heart pounding rapidly in his chest as his blood pressure rose sharply. No, he mouthed without a voice. He is a fallen demon slayer who became a demon out of sheer envy for his brother, I said. What? He was a demon slayer, the others asked in unison. You could see how their expression tightened in disbelief. The Japanese culture, especially at this age, believed in honor and integrity. Although it took place many centuries ago and they never knew him personally, they couldn't help but feel a sense of betrayal and anger. Like the unreasonable camaraderie they had for every demon slayer past, present or future, they also felt anger at the act of betrayal long ago. Not just any demon slayer, he was the strongest right after his brother Yorichi, the user of sun breathing. Kokashibo was the creator of moon breathing, the perfect opposite of sun breathing, I said. But no matter what he did, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't surpass his brother. Therefore he became a demon, in hopes of getting more power. The place fell into silence as each of them tried to understand what I said. It was almost incomprehensible for them. How can someone do such things just for power? There was also the fact that Kokashibo became a demon because he didn't want to die young from the curse of the demon slayer mark, but I left that detail out. He never fought for others in the first place, Jaiomai said, and veins popped on his joint hands. He only fought for himself. He was never one of us. All of the Hashiras present, one way or another, fought for something more than themselves. They did not care for power, they only cared about what they could protect with that power. So in a way, although someone like Sanemi wanted to surpass me, he was never envious of my power. It was not a desire born from selfishness. Instead, it came from selflessness, the desire that he should be the strongest and should do the most for others. He is a demon with 6 eyes on his face. You should be able to figure out his identity the moment you meet. His sheer presence and danger would drive your instincts haywire, I said. If you ever meet him, run on sight. There is no beating him. It would take the combined force of all the Hashiras if we even want to stand a chance against him. As my words fell on their ears, I could see their muscles tense and their fists clench. A feeling of weakness and vulnerability that they thought they would never feel again returned and gripped their hearts. In the canon timeline, they never knew how lacking they were. The only demons they fought were lower moons, and they thought they were strong enough and that the demons were the ones hiding. They wouldn't find out their own weakness until they came face to face with the truly powerful demons. But now, that changed. I told them how lacking they were, and I could see the desire and the need to grow stronger in their heart. Especially Jaiomai, you could feel a powerful aura emanating from him, like a volcano getting closer and closer to erupting. He would definitely go on to be many times stronger than his canon counterpart. Good, I thought to myself. One of my main goals was to motivate them to get stronger, in addition to ensuring their safety with the information on the upper moon. And that is all the information which I was able to gather so far. I finished and released a deep sigh. You have my utmost gratitude, Seiji. You would not believe how invaluable this is for humanity as a whole, Ubuyashiki said. And for the first time since I had met him and to the shock of everyone present, he bowed his head to me. A master bowing to his samurai. That was rarely seen. I could assume that with all the things he now knew, he would be able to come up with better plans on how to win this war. The other Hashiras soon followed as they all gave me a bow of respect and gratitude. Thank you. Why are you all thanking me, as if I am another entity? We are all in this together, fighting for the same cause. Helping you is the same as helping me. There is no need for such gratitude, I said. Just make sure you all stay alive to see the end of this war and live in a world void of demon, I finished and bowed even lower than them. Ubuyashiki looked at us, bowing at each other with a fond smile on his face before he turned his gaze to the sky. His blind eyes were not unseeing at that moment. They saw hope. Muchiro Takedo, Seiji's POV, I've already told this to Sanemi, Ju, and Rengoku, I began as the three gave me a knowing look at my words. I've reinvented sun breathing, I said. I beg your mightiest pardon, Ubuyashiki said, but what did you just say? I've recreated sun breathing, I said, putting it into different words. Ubuyashiki did not show much reaction other than his initial surprise. He merely rubbed his chin while taking a good look at me. He also released a thoughtful hum. I see. Naturally, if you've mastered all the 5 major breathing styles that were directly derived from sun breathing, you could find a way to retrace the source, he said, more to himself, but I nodded. Yes, but that would require genius talent and exceptional understanding of breathing styles and swordsmanship, he said, all qualities you possess in spades. I did not need to explain it to him, he understood it immediately. Although he was not a warrior due to his body condition, he was above everyone else in theory. I'd assumed the mixed breathing as you called it were a prelude to this discovery, he said. Indeed. But I never expected the path to lead to this either, I replied. A well-earned coincidence then, he smiled, and shook his head. Success is but talent and hard work meeting on the ground of opportunity. You really surprise me once more, Seiji, he said with a smile that barely contained his joy. Was that what you were practicing in the training grounds? I knew those techniques were different, but I thought you were creating new ones, not recreating the first breathing style, Shinobu asked with a helpless sigh. Is there a way you can teach this to your fellow Hashiras? Ubuyashiki asked. Being the leader of the organization, his mind immediately went on about how to best utilize the new weapon obtained against the demons. Teaching a completely new breathing style to a Hashira would be counterproductive. If we do try and teach the sun breathing to others, we should focus on the new generation instead. They are blank sheets, I said. And that is considering the person can learn sun breathing in the first place. There is a reason why the breathing style was forgotten at one point. It requires a genius to learn sun breathing, I said honestly. Everyone nodded in acknowledgement. Regardless, Ubuyashiki said after a moment of silence, I guess you finally have an official title now. For the longest time, we refer to you as the Pillar of Pillars due to your unique nature. But now, you can be a named pillar. The Sun Pillar, for some reason, that goes kinda hard. Sounds cool, I like it, Tengen said what was on my mind with a glittering grin on his face. I appreciate the title, but I'd prefer that no one other than he people present here know about this. If others know that I can use sun breathing, it can attract unwanted attention, I said. I understand, Ubuyashiki said. A secret weapon was most lethal. Besides, if Muzan learned that I have sun breathing so soon, he would bring the whole demon race to my doorstep just to kill me. Although that sounded like a great opportunity to end the demon as a whole, I was not strong enough to take them on just yet. After all of that, I had finished saying all the things I wanted to say. The reason why I called the Hashira meeting was over, and now, even if my friends go on joint missions, I would be able to be more relaxed, knowing that I'd prepared them with my future knowledge. Knowing that I've done more. The meeting continued as Ubuyashiki took advantage of all the Hashira gathered to give us direct orders and speech which he wasn't able to give previously. There was a lot of talk about strategies again and how to combat the increase in demon activities. Shinobu also spoke up and revealed the news that Kane Kocho had woken up from her coma. So little Kane is completely fine now, praise the gods, Jyomiai said as tears fell from his eyes like a waterfall. We gathered around him, sharing his relief as our friend had fully escaped death from a demon. The meeting lasted a total of 5 hours. I took the first hour with my information and news while the rest was spent on discussing other important matters. After the meeting was over, Jyomiai and Tengen came up to me, requesting a spar. The others have seen Sun breathing but they haven't, so they wanted to experience the first breathing style themselves. Not only out of curiosity but hoping that there might be a chance for them to progress in their respective techniques and breathing styles. I was about to accept their proposal but Ubuyashiki called me. I'm sorry to call you privately when the others also wanted to have time with you, but I have something of utmost importance to show you, Ubuyashiki said. Of course, what is it? I want you to come back to the Ubuyashiki mansion with me. There is someone I'd like you to meet, he said. I was caught off guard at first, because no one else except Jyomi knew where the Ubuyashiki mansion was located. It was such a hidden place guarded more heavily than anywhere else in the Demon Slayer Corporation. And so, I followed Ubuyashiki and his wife as they went to the Ubuyashiki mansion. The Ubuyashiki mansion, he is outside, Ubuyashiki said, exhaustion evident on his face from he travels. I gave a curt bow before I returned to looking around at the mansion. I was curiously searching for explosives for obvious reason but I was disappointed to find none. I guess Ubuyashiki planted the bombs right before Muzan found him. I walked through the quiet hallway of the mansion and made my way towards the courtyard. When I came to the veranda and looked outside, I saw someone, likely the person whom Ubuyashiki wanted me to meet. Swish 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 swish, my eyes were glued at the scene. A young boy with long black hair and cyan color at the end. He looked to be no older than 9 years old. He was swinging a wooden sword with the restless abandon of a madman. I knew who that was immediately and I couldn't help but chuckle. The future Mist Hashira. Muchiro Takedo. Schooling the genius, Seiji's POV, it was disgusting. It was revolting. It was horrible. His small frame did not match the wooden sword he was holding, it was made for adults, while he was a young boy, small for his age. His body moved with the elegance of an elephant. It looked like he was lagging in real life. The burden of injury yet to be healed was evident in each motion of his body. But the main reason was that he had absolutely no experience. His skills with the sword could be described as non-existent. And yet, I stared in amazement. My eyes could see that every action was made of flaws, they looked at perfect imperfection. But my eyes also noticed the incredible improvement that came with every repetition. Swish 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 swish, it was kind of scary. My eyes had never beheld such talent. Muchiro did not make a single sound, his eyes were a pool of void that sucked in the vibrance of the world, I think that was why it felt more silent than usual. Everything that anchored him to the world was gone, and now he teetered between the boundaries of death and existence. He had died while living. I felt a sense of familiarity when looking at him. I had the exact look long ago when my parents were killed. I no longer had the family that once anchored me to this reality where I felt like a foreigner. Muchiro must also feel the same way. His memories were lost, and he did not know who he was. Yet there was an ache in his heart. How sad, how fortunate. What's worse than grieving is to be unable to grieve. He knew he lost something important but couldn't remember it, leaving him hollow inside. With no memories buzzing in his mind and no face to grieve for, the only thing he had was the wooden sword in his hand and the thirst for power in his heart. No wonder he was improving so rapidly. There was no distraction, there was nothing in him. The demons stole it all. Still, your skills are atrocious, I said, making him turn towards me as he stopped swinging his wooden sword. He tilted his head in wonder while I slowly approached him in the yard. The sun was bright orange, it was late afternoon but it wasn't dark just yet. I expected an hour or two more before sunset. Pardon? How long have you been practicing? I asked. He had no memories, it was no use trying to talk to him about other topics except the sword he was holding. He paused, gazing at me with questioning eyes bordering on bafflement. The only thing absent in his eyes was fear, good. Or not. The reason for his lack of fear was because he had nothing to lose if he died. That's kind of depressing. Remember the times when I frequently consider suicide? Good times. I woke up yesterday, he said after the initial pause. So you've practiced for a day, I said thoughtfully. His rate of improvement was seriously incredible if he had only practiced for a day. But he shook his head. I was not allowed to do anything yesterday. I've practiced for an hour, he replied, emotions never reaching his eyes. I blinked at his words. Then I made the Sigma face to show that I was impressed. You know, the Patrick Bateman Sigma face. He deadpanned. Okay, maybe that was not funny without context. I cleared my throat and I think I saved some dignity with that action. Believe it or not, I'm something of a swordsman myself. Okay, good for you, he said and finally turned away from me. He straightened his posture and resumed his training by swinging his sword. He had deemed me to be a clown unworthy of his time. He had no guidance, he had no example to strive for. But instinctively, his body knew how a sword was to be swung and how to improve his skills. It was probably the Yorichi blood in him. In the face of being ignored, I was not discouraged. I've dealt with more stubborn individuals with bigger traumas, like Sanemi and Ju. So I went to the tree at the corner of the yard. The tree had a few training dummies and extra wooden swords for practice. I picked up one of the swords and made my way back to Michiro. When we stood side by side, the difference in our height was evident. I was 6 foot tall with peerless lean muscle mass. I was not big like Tengen or Gyomii, but I was still more muscular than the likes of Ju. On the other hand, Michiro was a kid of around 10 years old, but he looked smaller due to his injuries and the lack of nutrition. He only gave me a side glacé but otherwise continued his action. Swish swish swish, I hid a smirk and took a similar posture to his. They were only similar because while his posture was made of flaws, mine was flawless. It was perfection manifested in a stance. The way my muscles tightened, the weight distribution on each of my legs and the way my toes curled just right to grip the ground while also allowing instant mobility. Everything was just right. Michiro seemed to have noticed such a flawless stance instinctively because his eyes widened and he turned his head towards me. Then I swung the wooden sword down in a perfect arc. My action was smooth like water flowing over a perfect surface, it barely made a disturbance in the air. But at the exact angle I was aiming for, my swing stopped. It was not a centimeter too deep or shallow, just perfect. The sudden stop caused a burst of air, the only sound produced by the swing, and it came only after the attack was over. His eyes could no longer look at something else as I pulled back the wooden sword in a neutral stance. Then my body burst into action once more, I swung the sword horizontally and it cleanly sliced through the air. The shrill vibration of a whistle was left at the trail of my attack. My sword did not fight against gravity and instead used the fundamental force to strengthen my swing. It should be impossible to utilize gravity that way unless it was a vertical slash, but my crisp slash did that. Michiro continued gazing at me in silent awe as I performed attack after attack, each honed to perfection. It was deemed perfect by my supernatural eyes, so to a pair of ordinary ones, it looked almost unreal. It was like an illusion. I have attained such mastery over the sword that each swing felt natural, like the stars in the sky or the rocks on the ground. It felt natural, made by God instead of looking artificial and made by a man. Michiro, a boy who had an incredible affinity for swords, could comprehend everything, so it was even more impactful. How are you doing that? Michiro blurted out after a long stretch of silent gazing. I quirked my lips into a small smirk and ignored him, just like he did to me. My limbs and my sword moved as if one, and I continued performing my attacks against the shadow opponent. After a while of futile waiting, Michiro decided to take a page out of my book and picked up his wooden sword again. He did his best trying to imitate my posture. He failed horribly, of course. My forms were created just right, taking into account my measurement, the length of my arm, fingers, ligaments, etc. A perfect posture for him would be different from mine. Not only that, his body was too untrained, it was too injured and unskilled to even come close to imitating me. But carried by sheer talent and determination, he took a stance that was acceptable. After he got that down, his eyebrows relaxed and he started copying my movement down to the last detail. He now had an example in front of him, so his improvement soared exponentially. I allowed him to copy me, slowing down more than once and repeating the patterns that he found difficult. We did not exchange words and let the action do the talking, just the way I liked it. We did not notice the passing time as we continued our training. I performed the 5 fundamental swings of a sword: horizontal, vertical, and diagonal. Upward and a stab. I did it again and again. Michiro was a mirror as he copied my movement down to the last detail. But as time went on, he slowly realized that blindly copying me was not the answer. We had drastically different bodies. So instead of trying to replicate what I was doing, he started learning the fundamentals hidden behind my attacks. Anyone else would be left stumped, but with his natural instincts and talent, Michiro was able to benefit from what I was doing. The sun was setting on the horizon. The deep orange rays of the last sunlight wrapped the world in an intense hue of red and yellow. It was at this moment, minutes from complete sunset, that Michiro was finally able to execute a somewhat decent vertical slash. Swing. I stopped abruptly after I saw that decent swing. The line of my lips curved into a smile as I finally turned to him, acknowledging his presence to the fullest. I placed my hand on top of his head and ruffled his long wavy black hair. "That one was pretty good," I said. He looked at me with wide eyes that glazed over with the final ray of the sun. He seemed to be caught in a trance at that moment. The perfection he was imitating for hours finally acknowledged him. That approval brought the first hints of real emotion in his mind, blank of substantial memories. "What's your name?" I finally asked, although I already knew. He opened his mouth as if to answer instinctively, but then he paused, unsure. He had no memories of the past, but he thought he knew his name. But he was not sure. So I nudged at him again. Finally, he released the breath he was holding and said, "Michiro." It seemed like the first time he heard his Lao name as well. His sentence started unsure, but by the end, it was certain. My name is Michiro Takito." I smiled. "My name is Seiji Shirgan. Nice to meet you, Michiro. Would you like to learn more of swordsmanship from me?" I asked, and the nod came in a heartbeat. "Yes, well," I said, "that's good to see, because I would love to teach you more too." After hearing my reply, my eyes saw the briefest smile on his face. "Hentai boy," Seiji's POV. "So, what do you think of the boy?" "He'll become strong very, very quickly. I've never seen talent like that before. It's like the way of the sword is in his blood," I replied. I was in Ubuyashiki's official room. It was bigger than you expected and even hollower than you'd believe. There was only a single futon in the giant room and nothing else. The room was so empty you could smell the wood from which it was made. Ubuyashiki, who was sleeping on a futon, gave me a thin smile at my reply, as if that was not the answer to his question. "I meant in another aspect, his character, and his mental and physical health," he said. "Oh," I blinked. I just assumed that was what he was interested in, since he let me meet Michiro while he was training. "He is a broken boy who doesn't even know he is broken," I said. "We will need to wait for him to recover his memory first before we can even help him heal mentally. Physically, he is healthy and will only get stronger from here on out." "That's good to hear," Ubuyashiki said, his white eyes closed as if my sentence had truly brought peace to his mind. "He is currently sleeping in the other room. I suggest you don't wake him up tomorrow and let him sleep as long as he wants," I said. "Were you genuine when you promised to teach him?" Ubuyashiki asked from his sleeping state. I took a moment to consider that. I had planned to teach Tanjiro and Kane already, so I figured I'd better make it a proper Naruto team by adding one more. Besides, I reckoned it wouldn't take much to teach Michiro. In the manga, he was able to reach the Hashira level in 2 months by training alone. And with my help, it should even be more remarkable. "Sure, why not?" I said. "I'll be leaving now. Thank you for your time, Seiji. When the time is right, I will send Michiro to the Flower Mansion," he said. "Okay," I replied while leaving the room. I was free from getting missions because of the request I made a few weeks ago. But now I had other duties to attend to, something far more important than merely taking missions. Training the next generation. Although I thought to myself, I wonder if the new generation would truly need to fight again, I wanted to end Muzan even earlier than he was fated to die. If we went by the original timeline, Muzan would die in 4 years' time. There was nothing much I could do with myself to get stronger. My skills had reached nigh perfection. The only way I would grow is through natural growth or by fighting stronger opponents. What I needed now was the perfect opportunity. And I was hopeful that that would come this winter. When Muzan came for the Kamadu family under the cold blizzard of winter, I would be there, waiting. Seiji's POV, I returned to the flower mansion after that. It was already night by then, and while I was traveling through the thick jungle, I swiftly killed any demons I came across. 2 of them to be more specific. One of them was like a centaur, except he was a demonic donkey. The other was a man with a Scorpio stinger at his back. I killed them without even stopping my travels, they weren't worth the effort, I sliced their head clean off from behind. I used sun breathing to slay them, so although it was a single slash, they writhed in agony as they turned into ash faster than any other breathing style could do. It took a few hours, but before it was late into the night, I had reached the flower mansion. I entered the mansion from the back entrance like I did before and made a beeline to Kane's room. I minded my steps as I quietly entered the room. But even with my best effort to imitate a ninja, Kane was able to sense my presence immediately with her heightened senses obtained from the loss of her sight. She took a few sniff in the air like a dog. Seiji, she called. Don't tell me I smell that bad, I said, flustered at the fact that she could tell it was me from my scent. You don't, she giggled. She was half sitting on the bed, her back resting on the bed frame, and there was a book on her lap. I stopped my approach and took a moment to stare at the sad scene. I felt my heart twisting inside my ribs when I saw her dainty fingers feeling the writings on the page. Seiji, she questioned with a tilt of her head. I took in a deep breath to widen the cavity of my chest, hoping the feeling would diminish amidst the air. Then I released it in a long sigh that made my knees go weak. Yes, I responded gently and went to her side. I grabbed her shoulder as soft as I could, with both hands so that she knew I was not holding anything else with the other. She instinctively felt more secure at my touch. What were you doing? I asked. She perked up at the question and realized that she was holding a book in her hand. Her body language became timid as she closed the book with a small thud. Testing, she said. Testing what? My new senses, she said. I realized that ever since I lost my eyes, my other senses were enhanced. I've heard stories, Seiji, so I was wondering if I could read by feeling the ink on the paper. I hummed softly, and how'd that go? I couldn't feel anything. It feels blank, the ink is too thin, she said, her head falling by an inch. Would you like me to read it for you? I offered with a smile. It's a very lengthy book, you'd really do that for me? She asked. As if she wasn't aware that I'd do almost anything for her. I thought to myself. Here, let me see, I said and took the book from her hands. I took a glance at the cover to read the title. Echoes of Spring was the title of the book. Interesting, I said while opening the book and going through it as fast as I could. From an outside perspective, it looked like I was mindlessly flipping the pages of the book. But in reality, my eyes caught every page like a camera and breezed through the contents. In less than a minute, I was able to get the summary of the story by piecing obvious information like the titles, the chapter name, etc. I said thoughtfully, a blush crawling on my cheeks. Normally, I blushed from my ears, so you could imagine how flustered I was for the blush to reach my cheeks. Good thing Kane couldn't see it. This is a very intense read, I commented. The book was actually a novel about a mix of romance, drama and smut. To summarize it, it was about how a young teacher in a music school fell in love with her genius student. The female lead was the teacher, so it was an older girl falling for a talented young guy. Maybe reading this out loud for her would be tougher than expected. I'd feel pretty awkward to read out the spicy bits. Are you sure you want me to read this? I asked. She tilted her head, I don't know. What's the title of the book? It says Echoes of Spring, I said, and she froze. People had varying reactions when faced with absolutely horrible situations. Kane was the type of person to silently freak out within herself. Too bad my eyes could see everything. Her heart almost stopped beating as her vocal cords vibrated without making a sound. A healthy her of red immediately flushed her cheeks as she shyly took the book from my hands. Maybe we shouldn't do this. I'd prefer if you tell me about what happened today, like you promised, she said with fake chuckles that did not hide her nervousness. She didn't know that I had already gone through the story. She thought she was slick and that I wouldn't notice what I was holding. Why the sudden change of heart? I began, and a shit-eating grin spread on my lips, unseen. Are you afraid I'd discover that you read smuts? I teased, and much to my amusement, red finally consumed her face fully. What? She asked, covering her whole face with her hands. A smut about an older lady and her young lover boy, is that why you fell for me? I guess you have a type, I said, teasing the poor girl more. There was only around 2-year gap between us, but I was doing it for the sake of teasing her. She became extremely shy and embarrassed that she took to the sheets, covering herself with the blanket. I released a peal of laughter at the sake of her embarrassment. I could see her perfectly, she couldn't hide. It's not because of that, she said suddenly under the blanket after a while. I said, it's not because of that. I like those type of things because of you, not the other way around, she admitted. Adorable. But I made a mistake. I showed my capabilities to read her lips even under the blanket, and that seemed to suddenly give her an idea. She pulled the blanket off her and she emerged, sweaty and still blushing. And don't play that game with me, when you are actually a closet pervert, she said, and her words caused her to blush deeper. But this time, not for herself. What? Where does this come from? I know, she said, determined. Know what? I asked. She thinned her lips and looked at me with giant eyes sparkling with shyness but also a resolute rebellion. She wanted to tease me back. That you. She stuttered, you have been peeping at me for years. I felt the air change as Kene pulled an Uno reverse from somewhere. Now I was the one caught red-handed. I was not sure what happened either. But she called me out on my most embarrassing habit, which I would never tell anyone. In Japanese she called me hentai boy.